and this is my presentation of what I've learned throughout this semester in Computer Science 1 with variables. A variable is a place where data is stored. There are different types of variables that you can choose based on what type of data you're trying to store. The primary variable types, known as data types, include integers, characters, Boolean, floating point, and double floating point. Now, all variables must be declared as well as initialized. If you don't declare or initialize, you won't be able to run your program. You'll get an error. An integer variable is used to store only whole numbers. An int variable cannot be used to store decimals. You can use an integer variable to count something that cannot be cut in half, like cars. So like, let's say you try to use an int variable with something that gives you a decimal, you'll end up losing data. So it's best if you have a decimal number, it's best to use double. Okay, so right now I'm gonna talk about integer. So as you can see right here on this side, this is a program I made to count someone's age. So as you can see, you initialize the age at 0, and then I ask the user for their age. So then I see in their age, and then after that, once I see in their age, I display it to the monitor. So right here is where I ran the program. I asked the user, how old are you? I put my age, 22, and then so it sees out to the monitor, displays you are 22 years old. A character variable can be used to store a non-numerical value. The two main character type variables are char and string. Char can be used to store a single letter, and string can be used to store a whole line. Okay, so right here I have an example of a char. I initialized two chars. Char's first initial and char's second initial, and then I display to the monitor for the user to see what are your initials, and then I'm asking the user to input one symbol for first initial and one symbol for second initial. And then right here, I display to the monitor your initials are, and then I display the first initial and I display the second initial. And right here where I ran the program, you can see where I asked what are the initials. I put my initials AC. So then the computer displays your initials are AC. Boolean. A Boolean variable can only store a value as either true, which is equal to 1, or false, which is equal to 0. So right here in the code, I wrote bool yes equals true and bool no equals false. So when I see out yes, it gives me, on this side where I ran, it gives me a 1. And when I see out no, it gives me a 0. Okay, and floating point. Floating point variables are used to store real numbers, which are numbers that include decimal points. Using a floating point variable instead of an integer variable will give you a more precise value. So, like I said earlier, if you're counting something that cannot be cut in half, it's best to use an integer variable, which is like people or cars. But let's say you're trying to get like the average of something, which I did right here in this code. It's best to use a floating point so you won't lose data. So right here, I initialize num1, num2 at 0, and then I used for sum and average, I gave them double precision so I won't lose my data. And then I asked the user, please enter two numbers. And then the user input num1 and num2. And then so I initialize sum as being num1 plus num2, and then initialize average as being sum divided by 2. and then I displayed to the monitor the average is, and I display the average. And as you can see on this, on the right side, I ran the program. It says, please enter two numbers, entered 13 and 10. And then after the computer ran through the code, it gave me the average, which is 11.5, which is a decimal. If I would have used int, it would have just gave me 11, which I would have lost that 0.5. Assignment operator. The simple assignment operator is the assignment operators are used to modify the value of an object. The assignment operator is the symbol that is commonly referred to as the equal sign in mathematics. However, in C++ programming, two of these symbols mean equals and one means to assign. So as you can see right here, this piece of code, uh, int age, and then the age I assigned 22. See, it has one equal symbol, which is a sign in programming. If I had put 2, then it would have been actual equals, an actual value. Namespaces. Namespace std. Namespace std is used in C++ to avoid repetitive use of std within the code by simply adding namespace std at the beginning of your code. You save yourself the trouble having to put it before every C in, C out, and other possibilities. So on this side, as you can see, I use the names on the left side. I use namespace std at the top of my code. So when I entered the C out, I didn't have to do anything. I just had to do C out and then the operators and then my what I wanted to display and then the inline. But on the right side, since I did not use namespace std at the top, on every like right here where I did C out, I had to put std and then the colon C out, and then over here too when I put the end line I have to do the std. So it's the same thing, but it's less repetitive and less code to type. Next I'll be talking about C in and C out. C in is used to receive input from the user via a keyboard or disk drive. And then the C in passes input through the input stream into the program. To use it, you must include the IOStream library at the top of your code. And for C out, it's pretty much the same, just some differences. Like it's used to output data to the computer monitor or local disk. Like C in, it passes data through a stream, but instead of the input stream, using the output stream. And then just like C in, you must include the IOStream header file. The insertion and extraction operators. That's what you use to use the C in and C out. The extraction operator is used to receive input from the user, and the insertion operator is used to display data from the monitor. And here's an example of an extraction operator. It's pretty much it's just two greater than symbols. Which right here, receiving the data from the user, I'm seeing the extraction operator age. And this is an example of insertion operator. Here I put C out, the insertion operator's age. It's common to get confused right here. Like you would think insertion would be C in, but it's actually C out. And then the other one is the extraction is C in instead of C out. Arithmetic operator. Arithmetic operators. There's an addition operator, which adds together two values. For example, right here, x plus y. That's an addition operator because the plus is addition. Subtraction operator. subtracts one value from another. An example is x minus y using the subtraction symbol. And the multiplication operator multiplies two values. An example I use is x minus y, x times y. We're multiplying the two values. And then the division operator divides one value by another. My example is x divided by y. And here's an interesting one, the modulus operator. It returns the remainder of the division. So right here, x, and the percent sign is modulus y. So for instance, let's say I had 8 divided by 2, that would give me 4. But let's say I had 9 modulus 2, then the remainder of 9 divided by 2 is 1. So the modulus will give me 1 as the answer. And here's an example of using the operators in C++ code. You can see right here, x plus y, x minus y, x divided by y, x times y, x modulus y. Relational operator. So these are 5 of the relational operators right here at the top, as I said earlier. In C++ programming, 2 equal signs means equal to. If I had to put just one equal sign, then that would be a sign, which is when you're assigning a value to a variable. And then the next one, the exclamation point before the equal sign is not equal to, because the exclamation point means not in Boolean algebra. And then right here you can see the next symbol is the less than symbol, and then followed by the one facing the opposite way is the greater than symbol. And then if you put an equal sign in front of both of those, either one, it'll make it either less than or equal to, or the other one greater than or equal to. Example of them being used in C++ code, x equal sign y means x equals y. X exclamation point equals y means x not equal to y. And then the next one says x is less than y, and x is greater than y. And the next one says x is less than or equal to y, or the next one says x is greater than or equal to y. Now I'll be discussing logical operators. Operators are the Boolean operators, which one of them I just discussed a while ago, the exclamation point. But I'll get to that right now. So the first one is two and symbols means the and logical operator, which the both operands, which is the values on either side of the operator, must be true for the expression to be true. And then the next one is called the or operator, which is those two straight lines. Only one operand or the other must be true. So you can see it's common logic if you think about it. And means this one and this one, and or is this one or that one. And then the exclamation point is not. So if the condition is true, the operator makes it false. So it's the opposite of whatever it says. Here's examples of each one. I made little short programs. If x and y is greater than 2, see out yes. And then the next one I did, if x or y is greater than 2, see out yes. So for the first one, they both have to be greater than 2 for to see out the yes. And for the second one, as long as one of them is greater than 2, then the yes will see out. And then for the third example, it says if x is not equal to 2 or y is not equal to 2, see out yes. So it's the opposite. Now we'll be talking about conditional statements. In C++, we use if and else statements. And an if statement is the block of code which will execute if and only if a statement is true. And else if the if statement is false, this block of code will execute if and only if the statement is true. So if the first if statement does not meet the requirements, it'll jump to the next one, the else if. And if both of these statements are not true, then it will run the else block of code, which is a block of code that is executed when if statement is false. And here are two examples I made, one including the else if and one not. The first one is if x is greater than 2, see out yes. And if not, the else is just see out no. So if it's true, it'll say yes, but if not, it'll say no. And then the next example I use, if x is greater than 2, see out yes. And I gave another option. If that one's not true, it'll check the else if, which is if x is greater than 0, see out something else. I just put maybe just to you can see the difference between the two. And then if that one's not correct as well, then it'll go to the else, which is see out no. Loop statements. The three main types of loop statements are while, do while, and for. The while loop is a block of code which will continuously execute while the statement is true. The do while, which is very similar to the while, is a block of code which will execute at least once and will continuously execute while the statement is true. So the difference between the do while, for sure it's going to execute once, while the while statement, it may not execute at all. The reason being that in the do while, it checks how do I say? In the do while, does the, it runs the code before it checks the expression, and the while it checks the expression, then outputs the code. And then there's the for loop, which it does three things in the for loop. It initializes a variable within the statement, and it increments or decrements variables each time the statement executes, depending on which one you pick. And also, just like the other loops, it executes repeatedly while the statement is true. So here's examples of each of the three. And the first example is seeing that I initialize x equals 5, and I initialize y equals 3. They're integer values. So while x is greater than 10, x plus plus. So see, in the while loop, it checks the expression first, and then if it's true, then it does the incrementing right here. It runs the whatever code is within the loop. And then in the do while, as you can see, it does the code first. It runs what's in the loop, and then it checks the statement. So even if this is always going to be false, the do will run it at least once because it becomes before the check. And then for the for loop, like I said, it does three things within the expression, which is it initializes the variable. I initialize I at 0, and then it gives a condition, which I put if I is less than 8, then it's going to increment I by 1. So it's right now it's at 0. This program will keep running, and then it'll see out I. So keep running, see out I, up until once it gets 8, it will stop running. So this one will actually only see out until 7, because once it checks for 8, it will see that it is not less than 8, so it will exit the loop. Break and continue statements. A break statement can be used to exit a loop even if a condition has not been met. And a continue statement is used to skip to the next iteration of a statement. I use for loops. I use the same one actually. For int I equals 0, while I is less than 8, I plus plus. So I see out the I. But then right here I put if I equals 6, then break. So it's running through the loop, and once it gets to 6, it's just gonna exit the loop automatically, whether it met the condition over here or not. And then on the other hand, the continue statement, right here I put, instead of it, if I equals 6 break, like over here I put if I equals 6 continue. So it'll run the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once it gets to 6, it'll jump to the next iteration. So it'll skip that iteration and it'll continue till the loop is done. And now let's talk about array. An array is a series of elements of the same type placed in sequential memory locations that referenced by adding an index to each element of the identifier. An array is similar to a basic variable because it can also contain integer or double precision values, and it must also be initialized. The first index in an array is always 0, so if an array has 5 elements, then the indices is 0 to 4. Here's an example of an array. I made it an integer array, named it A, and I said that it was going to have 5 elements. And then I initialized the 5 elements, 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. You can also have the user input the elements for you. Or you can also use rand, which is a random number generator, to generate the numbers for you. There is also multi-dimensional arrays, which, as you can see right here, I have the brackets and then the 5. If I would have put in another brackets, another number, like for instance 3, it would have been 5 by 3, which means these 5 numbers, and we have 3 rows of it, so it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then row 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and row 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a multi-dimensional array. And lastly, I will discuss functions. A function is a group of statements that is given a name, and which can be called from some point of the program. A function is very useful when you need to run a block of code on a few occasions throughout the program. Instead of repeatedly typing the same code, you can create it as a function and simply call it every time it is needed. A function can either be value returning or a void function, which returns no value. Here are examples of value returning function and a void function. The first one is the value returning. So right here, this is where I made the function. It's an int function. I named it add. Int A and int B is what I named these two. So in the function, the code is I initialized an int value of n, and n being a plus b, and I wanted to return n for me. So then in the main function, I made an int I, and I is equal to the function I created above. And the two numbers I used for int A and int B were 10 and 17. So I want to see out the result. So I put see out the result is, and then I put I, which gives me the answer 10 plus 17, which equals to 27. So this is a value returning function. For a void function, it's less work to it. So up here I put you have to put, instead of putting int or double, you put void because you're not returning anything. And then I named it greeting, and then that's put anything. That's put, oh, like I forgot to mention, where it says int A and int B, these are called parameters. So in a value returning function, you need parameters. In a void function, you do not need parameters. So that's why I left the parentheses empty. So then the function, what it does, I put for it to see out a message which says my name, hello Alex. So in the main function, all I have to do is call the function, and when it runs, it displays the message I put, hello Alex. That's it for my presentation. I hope you liked it, and thank you for listening.